think we were going to end up with that time by doing it that way, but I don't think that we want people sitting around here all day on the chance we might get to them at 4 o'clock or something, like we did today, or yesterday, whatever day that was. Yesterday we brought in and on there, sat here half a day.
I was just throwing that away. Do you have my email address?
I was just trying to find it in there. What is it?
Okay, I got you. I got it.
Took it away.
This is the most strange
No, I'm not to be.
Yep, you have it, yeah. You couldn't get through the fourth day, I couldn't get home. And we watched, probably didn't
I think it's my baby's finger.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember that one.
All Martin I've woken up in the middle of the night.
Okay, they got about 5 pages that need to be on. They have about 5 pages still that need to be issued. They can't find the people. Okay, and then when they let you come in and get them and bring them up.
Yeah.
But then I woke up and I went and fell back to smoke for a while. Still.
Yeah, it was still raining when I left this morning.
That's
5 more than what we lost.
That's about 10 minutes.
From yesterday? Yeah.
Yeah.
We know this one was, you know, I ended up coming back.
Bob's gonna go get them. What?
Oh, did we really? That sounds like a great person to put on jury. Bring them on. Yeah, have some fun. Name, maybe I know. We never presented them before.
No, they don't have an attorney. They don't.
Oh, I've represented some founders, too.
Yeah, people don't want an attorney.
My favorites. But there's supposedly one.
Oh,
yeah, there are a lot of.
Mm-hmm.
that should be the.
Looks like I know.
That's what they're going to do first.
It's just water.
That's what it was the first day.
Yeah.
Big drink.
No, that's one.
Yeah, it's the last bottle, and it's just gotta.
Liz, did you get it?
I'll close the wheel.
I like room temperature water. Yeah, cold water I have problems drinking.
I don't know.
I can't drink it as fast.
Room temperature is supposed to be better. I don't either, Ken. You would know.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, but for this one.
Yeah. Hey, Mary, do you have, are you preparing that 3202 notice?
See what I was doing this morning? That was before I got you.
You gotta read the rule
I
a
think you
little closer.
after. See what I was doing.
Because, I mean, you do,
I was driving
it's not
past
like
the spot, and I was
statutory
going
mental health litigation, but you have mental health experts. Yeah. So, because I don't know like what
So we
doctors
should
are.
put what you want us to put, what they're gonna testify about? Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's, the rule says to identify the mitigate this
Okay.
mitigation.
Okay, I'm sorry. I must have misread it.
No problem.
I'll work on it.
trying to get your hair straight.
Oh, here. You got that, Leslie?
Yes.
Okay.
You. I'm gonna put your description on the pictures of mine.
Oh, mine won't really make a lot of sense, probably. No, she sent her that, so she can do that.
Bob?
Oh, we give them less. I thought it was just a picture.
That was ridiculous. I know we're on and no one else heard the thing. Ridiculous.
Bobby might be in the chat. Could you imagine this building being anymore?
Well, I know my phone kept vibrating. That was ridiculous.
My phone kept vibrating.
And then his phone vibrated.
Probably be on and off.
Yeah. She's saying it doesn't vibrate?
Well, they're not gonna hear vibrating in my ear.
You're not gonna hear it. I'll just know. Mine's gonna ring right now. Now that we're talking about it.
I just shut my mouth.
Ring.
It's not plugged where I'm at.
I don't see the ringing for
I only wanted you to have Twitter, because every time I let the
What's the
Twitter would be.
rain one?
Okay, but no, I don't even know how to sign on Twitter, so it's not me.
That's how I was just discussing with the girl.
But they're all saying that they're not.
Somebody had Twitter.
No, I know.
But every time I lifted the link.
There was no beeping
There's
going
no
on.
beeping, she's lying.
She did that.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
that wasn't true.
No.
It's not very chrono, I got that one.
Yeah, she asked me if I had Twitter. I said, no, or maybe one of them. Okay. Oh, I don't know.
I don't have it.
Yeah. They ought to bring him up. They ought to.
Don't forget to contact the law on me.
I know, I'm horrible too.
They got such
And I have all the.
I would like to. I send my whole letter out to people. I don't want to have people contact me. I don't change.
Yeah.
I use Twitter because I get updates from NASA. Like fun stuff that I like to know about, American Cup.
Hey.
Updates.
Good, how are you?
Something to get excited about.
Well, I know who you are. Posting it, posting it here.
Nothing at all, just ready to go.
Sunday, Sunday, take the little skeeter out.
Yeah.
Get all excited. Hanging around.
Just play it
All my enthusiasm. Leaving you fall asleep.
Oh, yeah. But who they got? Second quarter.
At Boston College.
Midway Saturday, one of those, wake up in the third, wake up in the fourth. Oh, that's all. Go BC.
Yeah.
I go to bed at 8:30 and I wake up at 5:30.
You sleep down again. After drinking 2 gallons of black coffee.
I need to do it.
It's like this. It's going up all the time.
Yeah.
You know, crap. You know how many times I tried to get to that good hotel in Tallahassee, but it's too far away.
Yeah.
Plus, the ones that are on the floor.
No, there's no, yeah, we walk, I'm stupid, I'm not stupid. I'm driving around town. Walking to the hotel, I mean, these smart
Nice,
guys.
you get free food there weekend and everything, what happens?
Go to the university, yeah.
Those little buggers call them forms, stamp it on.
The university ends the one that's across from the McDonald's thing?
Yeah.
Right
Hey,
there.
that's not, I mean, it's a dump, but it's not bad. There's 2 suites in there, one's called the senatorial, one's called the gubernatorial. And 2 years ago, we got the senatorial, and we got a balcony out, on Tennessee, so you can go on, you can smoke cigars with beer, watch everybody coming out of Holy Holes and get run over by cars. It was awesome. And I've never been able to get it since, and you really gotta go. Something happened and we lost it. I was you know, you really gotta do
You
it
gotta,
right.
and you gotta take care of the problem.
January.
Every time I told you, not to get me anything, and Mr. Kelly.
Well, it's because our schedule's not great, so that's what they need.
And then in Louisville, I got the movie.
I got two nieces live up there now. I stay in the Kyle house.
23rd, October 23rd or something. Yeah. Something.
Well, Miami's the 10th, so I think Louisville's the 17th.
The 17th, yeah, something, whatever.
I don't know. I think I'm gonna go up, it looks like I'll go up for parents weekend because my sister's got a house. They got like 20 people back, and they want me to run the tailgate. That's, you know.
You run the tailgate.
I run a good tailgate.
I know you do, after a couple hours, who's gonna be running?
He's very organized.
I don't, I mean, I drink a couple beers and the tailgate is in the game where I get whacked. I got a satellite dish, not automatic. It's built a little stand for it. It's just, you plug it in and it just automatically goes on fine. No more dicking around with that. I would spend 2 hours on a 4-hour tailgate.
That trees in that shit.
Tree hasn't been in
It hadn't been an issue on the new one?
He's not, he's got some tailgate there.
Yeah.
I think I can't remember, he's got some public lunch.
The guy next to us found a power outlet at the back of Center Field. Big houses. And so we've been tapping into their views, so I don't even know.
You know what they're paying to our tailgate and tailgate here? Now it's 25 pounds or 27.
They're golden cheese.
Yeah, of course, they're.
It's going up.
I don't like that. I don't like those spots around the damn stadium. Especially
Well, Matt's not
You're
good now.
trapped down in there.
the parking
Well,
lot where you.
Well, what's good with Matt's, the whole team visits, the bus stops right there, so they get, by the time they start tailgating, the bus comes, it's bad.
I mean, you can get into that parking lot to the left when you're coming across. Whatever that road is, with the big tree and stuff.
Yeah, that's where they are.
That's where they are.
Yeah, well, that's
Right
where-
by the business.
That's where one of the top spots, like, look at the thing.
That's where Harrison's Buddy is too.
27,500 kids, then a couple home games to get that, each car. So there's 3 or 4 of them, 100,000.
They boosters, they probably have, do they have club seats too? I mean, are they in the boxes?
They got real around 50 down below. They got like, I don't know, 16 or 18 seats. They're on the 15. Home side.
Who's the big money bags?
Well,
The
the
hotel
FPLE,
guy?
the guy I introduced you to.
The FGLE guys?
FPLE.
They're on their way up.
No, I went.
Bob is getting them,
Oh, I know.
Bob's ain't getting them, Bob's just standing here doing nothing.
not that one.
Oh.
We have a lot of Bobs.
That's Bob.
That's Bob, our other brother,
Good Bob, evil Bob. See no Bob.
Duck and Bob. Now there's an FPLE employee.
He's retired. He was the big.
What do you take his damn drop money and buy 1 year booster contribution? I mean,
Big money is, they make good money. I think you should do
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
He's in there. This is white.
The five that.
No,
For family?
he just, told me I bring him places.
No, they didn't, that's what we get paid. They never checked it.
There's no way he made that money with FPLE, I'm telling you. The director doesn't make 150 grand.
Yeah, don't make that much.
I don't know where he is. I know she's in the banking business.
No, we don't.
Oh, the wife is? Maybe it's the wife's money.
No kidding, never had kids.
Oh, man, yeah, then they saved a ton.
Genius. Ike was on that road for a little
I
while.
wasn't on that road, but I'm not on that road anymore.
Of course, he's still, thanks to giving me every time he, wow. Still in the
Oh, yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah, still in the house.
Super nice guy. Yeah, Bob got me a tenant. Rents mine.
Got a condo on water. Get out of general manager of, what is that, what, 7, 8 years?
Oh, yeah, been a long time.
Yeah. Was he built a new place?
Yeah. Well, when we first started,
Yeah, then his father told him that.
Ready?
We're ready.
Morning, this is Ralph in the morning.
This morning?
The first 3 rounds.
I have all.
No, I couldn't take it, because I'm pretty sure Mike lived there 2 years.
Daryl, did you, all of them are back this morning that were supposed to be.
Oh, they all showed up from last night, they were having trouble wrangling them?
What about
There's a
any,
lot of juries down there this morning, probably 200 juries.
what about the no-shows that,
No, they didn't show up, so.
none of that?
Well, I found out.
No.
They didn't come out to the hallway.
There were 6 no
Give me
shows.
Morning, there's a lot.
Get them all red card.
About 250, okay.
Well, once we put the table around, there won't be an issue. It'll be on the far side of the table.
All stand, please. Here, the Circuit Court of the 19th Judicial Circuit of Florida and for St. Lucie County is now in session. Honorable Judge Dan Bond presiding.
Okay, thank you all.
You may be seated.
On the record, all counsel present, defendants present, the jury panels, and outside the courtroom. Okay, do y'all know if any of the ones that weren't here yesterday?
I forget Bob.
Can you ask him just to let him know who's here and who isn't?
The official one didn't take the tickets, but that was a no-show.
Do you know if any of the ones that didn't show yesterday are here today, do you know?
That I'm not 100% sure. The first 3 rows, there were 17 that were supposed to return. Those, all 17 showed up. And according to my sheet, there was, none of the no-shows were in that first set of 3 rows, I don't think.
Yeah, they were.
Were there?
Yeah.
5 on it?
Well, 17 there is in 3 rows that are, but they're not part of the no-shows.
We don't have them marked. Okay.
I got them marked. Bring that.
Well,
Let's just,
when we called them up, sir, downstairs, the 17 that I had,
okay, so the no-show.
They're here.
Okay, all right, that makes sense.
I didn't have no extras.
Okay. All right, next on the list would be Ms. Bowl.
Allison Bowl.
Is she,
Allison Bowl, Bobby.
hang on just a minute.
Oh.
Just a minute. Is she one that had media exposure, I assume?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
She also raised her hand about nature of the case.
Okay, all right, yeah, all right, have Ms. Bowl.
As they're stepping out, Judge, we spoke this morning, Ms. Celedonio and I, about a couple of jurors. One of them is one of the ones that did not show up yesterday. We wanted to ask you how you wanted to handle it. It's Williams Villegas, which is a juror C3, which makes him in C36. In looking at his questionnaire, really didn't fill it out, marked on there no English. We were going to agree to just release him if he did show up, but we didn't know you had mentioned taking some action against these jurors that didn't appear, so we didn't want to just do that without bringing it to
If y'all agree to release him, I won't take any further action. If you're not agreeing to release him, then I may.
No, we're agreeing to release him.
Is that right, Ms.
Yes,
Sullivan?
He has a built-in excuse.
State defense are agreeing to excuse Mr. Villegas for cause.
Yes.
Okay.
And there was one.
All right, just a minute.
Oh, sorry.
All right, the state defense agreed to excuse William Villegas in C36 on our chart for cause.
Yes, sir. There was another person in In the group that would be the callback group, which is for tomorrow night, which is Group E, and that was a no English that we agreed to release. The name is, last name is Mosquueda, is E40. And we're agreed to release that person for cause, and I think the jury clerk has already been informed to let that person go.
It's agreed to excuse that person for cause?
Yes, Your Honor.
The name was Moscata?
This one.
No, no, no.
What's the first name?
The first name is Nerida.
Excuse, say if it's agreed to excuse Nerida.
The one we're just talking about? Not on ACH.
Okay, y'all ready to have Ms. Bowl come in? Ready for Ms. Bowl?
Yes.
Yeah, I do have an issue I want to bring up.
Yes, sir.
I talked with counsel, I think it's hopefully necessary to relay our individual board issues. Particularly, I understand the court's ruling yesterday, but I'm raising it again. I'm raising it because I think it is really, really important that we be able to address individuals on that penalty qualification. I understand the court trying to balance efficiency with doing what we need to do. I get that. So let me propose something perhaps in the middle. Rather than having a complete group session, maybe the court would consider groups of 5 or 10 just for death penalty qualification. That might accomplish a goal, but still allow us to position where somebody does something really bad, we don't take the whole group. And that's what we're really trying to avoid, because there are some, we know from the questionnaire, there are some timelines out there. If we start talking to them, it might create a prejudicial effect of roles, and we're trying to avoid that. So I would ask that you consider, you know, I know you made a ruling, I'm not trying to disrespect that.
I understand.
That's okay.
Take
But, you know, maybe we come toward the middle a little bit, try to accomplish the court's goal, and still accomplish what we're trying to do.
Agadol, Mr. Eisenhower, any other comment on that?
No, sir, I think my position is well stated.
Okay. All right, well, I'll consider doing that. I want to finish this part of the exposure, media exposure portion before we get to that. So I'll note the defense continuing objection, and I don't take y'all's objection as disrespectful in any way. Not at all. So don't think I think that. Okay, we have Ms. Bowl come in.
Allison Bowl, sheet number 4.
Ms. Bowl?
Ms. Bowl, up here, please.
Ms. Bowl, thanks for bearing with us, ma'am. Just have a seat there on your left, there in the front row. You're not in trouble or anything, you haven't done anything wrong, don't worry. We just want to talk to you outside the presence of the other folks for just a few minutes. So if you'll just make sure you speak up so we're able to hear you, and just be as candid with us as you can, okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Stay with me.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for your patience. I know this is tough, but you know, the reason we brought you in here, and we are going to bring with several of your other jurors, is because you've indicated in your questionnaire that you have knowledge about the case from the outside. And as you can imagine, if we asked you about that in front of everybody else would have your knowledge. So we do it this way, and it slows things down, but it's important. So we're going to just start off talking about a couple of basic concepts that of law. We are in a court of law, therefore the only thing any of us are concerned with is a juror's willingness and ability to follow the law. Are you a rule follower?
Yes, I try to be.
Try to be a law-abiding citizen. In this
Yes.
case, the laws will be provided to you by the judge. He's the final word on the laws. A couple of the very most basic concepts of criminal law in this country are the presumption of innocence and the burden of proof. As the defendant sits here today, the Constitution requires that you as a jury presume him to be innocent. You've heard of that before?
Yes.
Okay, and the second premise of criminal law is that when your government accuses one of your fellow citizens of a crime, it's our job to prove guilt. And the way we do that is we call witnesses, we put them in that witness box, they raise their hand, you assess their credibility, you weigh their testimony in light of the other evidence and other testimony in the case, and then you make a decision based on what happens in here, not based on what you may have read, seen, or heard in the paper, okay?
Okay.
All right, so let's start off by you telling me in as much detail as you can remember what it is you think, and I say think because sometimes jurors are thinking of a different case, what it is you think you know about this case, and tell us where you got that information.
I believe it was a traffic stop around Edwards Road in Fort Pierce, Florida. And I know that Sergeant Morales was killed while he was sitting in his vehicle.
Okay.
And I saw bullet holes in the vehicle. And then I know the defendant is claiming self-defense.
Okay. Bullet holes, like you mean on TV or in a...
Like on TV showing like pictures of the...
Okay. When did you see all of this? When would you think the last time you saw anything was?
That was recent.
Recent?
Within the last couple of weeks.
Okay. Before, obviously, the judge told you not to watch or read or anything about it. You haven't seen anything now, right?
No.
Okay. So back a couple weeks before you showed up here?
Yes.
Okay.
But I did hear about it prior, like when it actually happened back in 2013 as well.
All right. And based upon what you saw on the TV and maybe saw back in 2013, did you form any fixed or definite opinion about the guilt or innocence of anybody in this case?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And what is that?
He's guilty.
Okay. And so I go back to those two basic propositions, and only you can answer this question. And it is that the law requires that our case, first I say to you, is it possible, can you envision a scenario where the media gets it wrong? Where they report incorrectly or inaccurate information?
I can. That can happen.
Okay.
Yes.
And so, of course, that's the primary reason why we don't allow jurors to consider any untested, unverified information from outside the courtroom and allow them to bring that to bear on their deliberations. So my question to you is, first of all, understanding the burden of proof that we talked about and understanding the presumption of innocence, would you be able to sit as a juror in this case and set aside any information you read, saw, or heard? So for instance, if you saw photographs in this case and there are no bullet holes in the car, would you say, oh, forget about it, there is bullet holes in the car because I saw it in the media? That's something you said. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. But if the evidence showed no bullet holes in the car, would you still be thinking there were bullet holes in the car? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, it does.
Okay. What do you think?
I did see pictures also, but if I didn't see any of that, that would change the story, of course.
Okay.
But it is difficult for me, knowing the situation, and not even with that being said, just the thought of an officer being killed and also a veteran. That
okay.
is enough.
All right, so you're telling me that, and not only you can answer this question, and we appreciate your honesty, and that's why we're here. You feel so strongly about it, you cannot set it aside?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you very much.
Did you wish to inquire?
Thank you.
No objection, Judge. Ms. Bowl, I'll go ahead and release you from jury service. I know it's been a long couple of days having y'all running in and out, so I appreciate your patience with us and with me. Prepare to do your civic duty, but I'll go ahead and release you. You don't have to come back unless you want to. I'm not running you out, but you're free to go. But I do want to thank you real quick before I let you go. Okay? Thank you very much, man. We appreciate you bearing with us. For the record, Ms. Bowl was excused for cause by the defense without state objection. Mr. Denmark. Mr. Denmark.
C5. James Denmark, C5, Bobby. Mr. Denmark, up here, please.
Morning, Mr. Denmark.
Morning.
You have a seat there in the front row there on your left for me, please.
Thank you very much, sir.
Right there's fine. Thanks for bearing with us, Mr. Denmark. You're not in trouble or anything, you haven't done anything wrong. I'm going to let them talk to you outside the presence of the other folks for just a few minutes. So if you can just make sure you speak up for us, so I'm able to hear you in these nice ways and take down what you say. And just be as candid with us as you can, okay?
What is
Back on.
Good morning, sir.
How you doing?
Good. Thank you for your patience. So we brought you in because in your questionnaire you indicated you weren't sure whether you had any information about the case. And obviously if you do, and you said it in front of everybody had your information, right?
Yes.
So can you tell us now that you've had some opportunity to reflect upon this, do you know any facts or details about this case from a source
outside of the jury questionnaire in the courtroom?
The only thing I knew of, I don't look at the news that much. I
Okay.
just knew that Mr. Morales was shot and killed.
Okay.
And that's pretty much the gist of the only thing I got. I mean,
Okay.
I try to stay out of the news.
All right.
I'm happy-go-lucky, so I just gotta keep my nose out of it.
Okay. All right, so having said that, is it fair to say because you don't have any real details or information outside of the fact that somebody's dead, that you have not formed any opinions in this case according to your questionnaire?
No, I have not formed any opinions on it.
Okay, so then my very simple question, and we'll have you on your way, is can you assure all of us, basically, Mr. Eisenhower said he committed this crime, and so we got to prove it. That's simple. We prove it by testimony and evidence in court. So if you're sitting here as a juror, the only basis upon which you can render your verdict is the testimony and evidence in court and the judge's instructions on the law, and not anything you may remember having read in the paper 2 years ago.
Yes, that is correct.
Can you do that?
Yes.
Okay, can you also promise us, follow the judge's instructions, if somebody tries to talk to you or it pops up on the radio, turn it off and get out of the room?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Manchin.
Thanks, Denmark.
Hello.
Good, thank you. How are you?
I'm here.
It's a good day, at least made it into the weather. Okay, so how did you actually hear about Sergeant Morales getting killed?
My mom watches the news and she texted me about like a shooting or something. She didn't know exactly what happened. And then she told me later on that Mr. Morales was the one that actually got shot and was a police officer.
Did you know Sergeant Morales at all?
No.
All right, I saw in your questionnaire you know the Duran brothers.
Yes.
And which agency do they work for?
They work for Stewart PD, and then actually my cousin-in-law, actually I didn't put it on there, I didn't think about it, is actually a Stewart sheriff officer as well.
Did you, how close are you to them?
With the Durans?
Yes.
I went to school with Dan. We talk every now and then. I mean, we're not like hang out every weekend. It's more like, once every 2 or 3 months we call, hang out, things like that.
Did you wind up talking to either of them or your, was it cousin-in-law?
No. I really, like I said, I try to stay out of anything without talking to people.
So you didn't talk to them about this case at all?
No. I actually haven't talked to them in a while.
Well, I mean, this happened a little over 2 years ago, so...
No, like I said, I mean, I don't really talk about anything because I'm the type of person that keeps, his work and my work separate. Is there anything that happens kind of like with things in the news? I don't ask them for inside information. He knows stuff I don't know, and I know stuff he don't know, so I just kind of leave it like that. I try not to brown nose and dig into things like that.
So when your mom texted you about Sergeant Morales dying, why do you think she did that?
She's she's retired, so she's watching the news all the time, and she's a churchgoer, so she's always kind of in that morale of that. And she keeps me updating things because I kind of work in Fort Pierce, and it was kind of the same area, so she was wondering if I heard anything about it, saw anything that happened, things like that.
Making sure you're safe because you're in this relative neighborhood.
Yeah.
Got it. How did you feel when you learned about the news?
Oh no. Okay. I mean, I really had no response for it because I don't know anything on what happened. It's kind of like saying John took my eraser. Okay. I don't know what led up to that. I don't know anything. I'm just going by just the overall picture of it.
All right. Very good. Thank you. I have no other questions for you.
Stay in the other.
No, sir, Judge, thank you.
Mr. Denmark, I'm going to let you go this morning. I'm going to have you call back this number that's on the back of this red card after 5 p.m. tonight.
Okay.
But you're free to go the rest of the day. Please, between now and then, don't discuss it with anyone or read any or listen to media accounts. But if you'll please call this number after 5 p.m. tonight, there'll be some information on what else you need to do about this case, if anything.
Okay.
Okay? You understand?
Yes, sir.
Okay. As soon as you give me a card, sir, you can go. Thank you. We appreciate you bearing with us.
Have a good day, sir.
Thank you.
Numbers on the back.
Harold Wiener.
Orlando Rivera.
Mr. Rivera.
Oh, we gave him a card yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Next one will be, I think, seat 9, sir.
Seat 7, seat 8 were no-shows.
So, yeah, for the record, Mr. Broncossi and Ms. Torres did not appear for jury service. All right, Mr. Wiener?
Wiener? Yes, sir.
Harold Wiener?
Bobby Harold Wiener, seat 9.
Sir, up here, please. Morning, sir. Thanks for bearing with us. You just have a seat there on your left there in the front row.
Thank you, please.
Indicate.
Thank you very much.
We appreciate you bearing with us. You're not in trouble or anything. You haven't done anything wrong. Don't worry. I'm going to let them talk to you outside the presence of the other folks for just a few minutes. So if you can just make sure you speak up so we can hear you, and just be as candid with us as you can, okay?
Will do.
Okay.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Sorry, I'm just trying to keep track, because if I don't check people off, I'll be completely lost. You indicated yesterday, by a show of hands, when the judge indicated if there was anything about the case or the charges that could create issues for you. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. This is kind of why we do this now outside the presence of all the other jurors, so as to avoid...
I understand.
You got it. Okay, so this is your opportunity then, Mr. Wiener, to go ahead and tell us what it is that you wanted to tell the court.
All right, nothing I want to tell you. All I can say is that prior to being summoned and given the first, your first, restrictions, I've read about this case and I've seen, TV accounts reported on the news in the evening, so
Okay.
I have, I pretty much know what the paper said and what the news broadcast said.
Okay, can you tell us in as much detail, first of all, when do you think you last read, saw, or heard something about this case?
Prior to the, I go through the paper in the evenings when I get home. I watch the news in the evenings, so, whenever it was, I couldn't give you a date.
I got you.
I mean, it was I stopped looking at the news, local news, and I didn't read the paper while, after the, given the instructions.
Okay, good.
I'm sorry, Mr. Backer, let me interrupt. Let me have you approach this for a second here on another matter. Bear with us just a minute, sir. Potential jurors having a medical issue, so you can excuse him for the day. If you could have him call back, what group is he? 7 to 8 tomorrow. Okay.
Calling that tomorrow night, I think.
Okay, just have him call back tomorrow night. But he's free to go today and tomorrow. Take care of this. Okay, I'll put this in. I'm sorry to interrupt. Mr. Will thought made it sound like it was something that needed to be taken care of right away, so I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, so Mr. Wiener, we talked about the source of the information. Can you tell us in as much detail as possible what it is you recall reading about the case or seeing about the case on TV or whatever the situation might be?
Sure. Read where the defendant was being pulled over for a traffic violation, and that he was. I know the background that he was on parole. Was on parole, and seemed like he didn't want to stop. And then when he got finally got pulled over, he came out with a firearm and shot the police officer.
Okay. And as
Opinion as to guilt of Mr. Tisdale, and this might not be the best trial for you to sit on?
Can you repeat that again?
Sure. Do you think that because of what you've heard on the news, do you think that you've already formed a little bit of an opinion of guilt of Mr. Tisdale?
No, I do not have any guilt here.
Okay. All right, so tell me a little bit about what you remember hearing in the news from a couple of years ago.
What I remember, it was on TV, and they said that somebody shot the sheriff, and then that's all. And I didn't follow anything else until today.
And when you watched it on the news, do you remember what channel you were watching?
It was channel Fox 25, something like that.
And when you heard that story, how did it make you feel?
I felt sorry for somebody being killed, so that's all.
Did they talk in the story about how they caught the person that shot the sheriff?
No, I don't remember that. I didn't follow the whole thing.
Okay. And over the past 2.5 years, how many stories do you think you've seen on this?
I haven't seen anything else.
Okay. On your original questionnaire, you had selected no, that you hadn't seen any media about this. Is there a reason why you raised your hand yesterday and didn't say it on the original form?
I didn't know. I thought it was something new, but I recall that I saw that the first time it happened. That's why I raised my hand. I wanted to make sure if it was something else.
Well, you remember filling out the questionnaire, right?
Yes.
And the questionnaire listed the charges and talked about how there was a Deputy Sergeant Gary Morales was shot and killed in February 2013, right?
Right.
And then I was asking if you knew personally Sergeant Gary Morales, and you selected no. If you know anything about the case, the facts and circumstances surrounding the case, and you selected no. Why did you select no when you're telling us yes today?
The thing is, I didn't remember exactly the story until yesterday, and then when they somebody said, asked me a question, if it's for or from the past. And I remember that I saw something from the past. That's why I remember and I raised my hand.
I had trouble hearing the first part of your statement right there. Could you say that again?
Okay, when one of the other jurors said that if it was both for today, for present and the past, and then I remember that time that I saw that 2 years ago, that's why I raised my hand. But I don't remember exactly what was going on after that.
When did that juror discuss the case with you and talk talking about present or past.
Right here, when he sat here and then he raised his hand, he asked the question. If it was, like, if it's something present today, or from the past, and then they just said for both. So I remember, so I saw something two years ago. That's why I used my hand for that purpose.
Okay. What wasn't clear when you were filling out the questionnaire that said, have you seen or heard any newspaper, television, internet, or radio stories about this case? What wasn't clear about that question on your questionnaire?
Everything was clear.
Okay, so if it was clear a week ago and you answered no, why just all of a sudden the other day are you suddenly remembering it? What changed?
There was no change because I did not follow the whole thing from 2 years ago, and then I remember yesterday that it was on TV. That's why I raised my hand and said that. What was I going to say again? I recall that I heard that on TV, and then I saw it too.
And it was just that split second when your neighbor in the chair said, asked the judge whether it was in the past or just since you filled out the questionnaire?
Right.
Now, you read on the questionnaire about the facts of the case, the general facts of the case, right?
On the questionnaire? Yes, I did.
Okay. And you were paying attention when you filled out the questionnaire, or were you just kind of just getting through it?
I just got through it, and I totally forgot about everything until yesterday.
Okay, so it sounds like if you were just getting through it, you weren't taking the questionnaire particularly too seriously. Is that a fair statement?
I took it seriously, yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to object. I mean, we're way off topic, media, and the gentleman's asked and answered these questions.
Sustain the objection. Explain his answer.
I have no other questions.
State have any other questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Polycarp, I'm going to give you a card with a phone number on the back. If you'll please call this number tonight after 5 p.m. There'll be some information on there about what you need to do, if anything, with regard to this case. You're going to be free to go today, but if you'll please make sure you call this number after 5 p.m. today.
All right.
You understand?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As soon as I give you the card, sir, you can go.
Okay. Constant,
Ms. Gettler, come in.
Bobby, Constant Gettler, C-15. Ms. Gettler up here, please.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Can you please say she's there? Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Gettler, you're not in trouble or anything? You haven't done anything wrong? They're going to talk to you outside the presence of the other folks for just a few minutes. So you can make sure you speak up for us and be as candid with us as you can, okay?
Okay.
All right, now let me just, before y'all get started, Ms. Gettler and I go way back, so far back, I don't even want to admit how far back. I've known her since 9th grade,
Yes,
probably.
yes.
So I know a lot of her family, her husband. So just so y'all know.
Okay. Okay. So the reason we brought you in, Ms. Gettler, is because you had indicated in your questionnaire that you might have been exposed to some media coverage or information about the case on the outside, right?
Correct.
Okay, so obviously if you say, talk to us about that in front of everybody else, they know what Ms. Gettler knows. So that's why we do this way, and that's why it's taking so long. But having said that, just want to talk to you about a couple very basic concepts of law. Okay, we're in a courtroom, and in the courtroom, the only thing that rules, the only thing that matters is the law. And the judge is the final word on the law, and when you're selected as a juror, or if you are, in this case, he's going to give you the law, which I call them the rules of the process. And all we need is a commitment from you as a juror that you're going to follow the rules, okay?
Okay.
So we start off with a couple very basic concepts of criminal law. The first is the presumption of innocence. Everybody who walks through that door as a defendant is provided by the United States Constitution with a presumption of innocence. That doesn't mean they're innocent. But what that means is for you to be a qualified juror, at the outset you have to say, okay, I presume him to be innocent. Let's see what the people who charge him with the crime have to show me. That's Daryl and I, okay?
Okay.
On behalf of the state, when we accuse one of your fellow citizens of a crime, it's our job to prove guilt. And we do it like this. We call witnesses, they take that stand, they raise their hand. Ms. Gettler looks at them, you assess their credibility, you look at their testimony in light of the other evidence and testimony in the case. Have you been a juror before?
I was, but it didn't go to trial.
Okay. So, and then at the end of the case, based on everything that happened in here and the judge's instructions on the law, you render your verdict. Are you with me?
Yes.
Okay? That's the law. The law applies to every phase of this trial. That's all that matters. So the law is, you cannot rely upon information you discovered or learned outside the courtroom. There's nothing wrong with having that information. There's not even anything wrong with forming opinions based on that information. We want jurors who read the paper because I want people who are involved in their community, who care. But in the end, all we need is a commitment from you that whatever you learn outside the courtroom stays outside the courtroom. So what we need to start off with first, and then I'm going to come full circle.
Okay.
All right, so we have civic lessons out of the way.
Okay.
Tell us, in as much detail as you can muster up, what you think you know about the case and what the source of that information is.
The only thing I can tell you I remember about the case is when it happened.
Okay.
Okay. And whatever I saw in the media back then, between there and now, I probably haven't kept up on it or really don't know that much about it.
All right, so it was over 2.5 years ago.
Correct.
And so I know this is a difficult question. We're running into this with you, all of your fellow jurors. Do you have any recollection of facts or details, or are you just a big picture, generally remember person? Does that make sense? Do you have any
All
details?
I remember is that there was a police officer that was shot.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And there was a gentleman that shot him.
Okay.
I probably couldn't have even told you this name until this past week, so.
When you got this questionnaire?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And of course, you've seen, read, heard, done nothing about it since the judge told you don't do that, right?
Correct.
Okay. So, we have to prove not only that a crime occurred, but that he did it. And again, that's going to be based on the evidence. Can you assure us, under your oath, as a prospective juror, that you can follow the Judge Vaughn's instructions, that your verdict will be based only on what happens here in court?
Yes.
And you can assure us that you come to this process giving the defendant his presumption of innocence?
Yes.
And that you're going to make Daryl and I do our job, and that is it's our burden to prove his guilt, and that's where the burden will stay?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Ms. Gettler, good morning.
Good morning.
Just a few questions about the media exposure that you had back in 2013. How was the first way that you learned about this shooting?
I would probably say by word of mouth.
Okay. And what was told to you?
Just that there was a police officer that was shot. That was it. I didn't know him, didn't have any connection with him whatsoever.
And I can't imagine you'd have a positive feeling about that. How did that make you feel when you learned it?
Well, it was disheartening for sure.
When was the next time you wound up learning some information about it? Was it on the...
Probably that evening on the news, and probably the newspaper the following day.
All right, and the news, when you watch on the television, you wind up watching the full story, I'm sure, right?
Probably.
And what do you remember out of that story?
Probably not much, because it's been so long ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the newspaper. What newspaper do you get it delivered to your house, or do you read it online?
No, it's online.
Okay. Do you recall what newspaper you read?
TC Palm.
And what do you recall from the TC Palm story?
Probably just the headline, and if there was a picture, but I probably couldn't even tell you what it was. I probably didn't even read the whole detail of the thing, so.
And over the past couple of years, you said that you probably haven't kept up on it.
No.
Okay, so Probably or definitely? I mean,
Well,
what do
we
you
spend
kinda-
a lot, my husband and I spend a lot of time in Okeechobee. We go back and forth.
Sure.
So I really don't keep up on things that take place here locally like I would have if I lived here, you know, full time. So I don't really keep up with too much that goes on over here.
Got it. So if you did happen to notice an article, you wouldn't have read it. You would have just maybe seen the title.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Okay. Have you heard anything in the past 2-3 weeks before you came in here and filled out the juror questionnaire?
No. Mm-mm. I didn't even know when I came in here that was the case that I was going to be here for.
Okay. And I can't imagine that you would be breaking your old friend's rule about not looking at any
no,
media since
absolutely
then, right?
not.
All right. Very good. Okay. I don't have any other questions for you. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
State, have anything else?
No, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Scaler, I'll let you go. I'm going to give you a card, red card with a phone number on the back. If you'll please call this number after 5 p.m. tonight.
Okay.
Stay today, but if you'll just make sure you call, there'll be some information about what you need to do, if anything. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, man.
Thank you.
Robert Barnes.
Is that Mr. Barnes?
Robert Barnes. Robert Barnes, C-17.
I'm sorry, who's that, Mr. Taylor?
Robert Barnes, C-17.
Oh,
Sir, up here, please.
Thank you, Mr. Barnes. Bear with, you just have a seat right there where he's indicating. We appreciate you bearing with us very much, sir. You're not in trouble or anything, you haven't done anything wrong. We're just going to ask you some questions outside the presence of the other folks for just a few minutes.
Okay.
So if you can just make sure you speak up so we can hear you and just be as candid with us as you can.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
You had indicated on your questionnaire that you may have read, seen, or heard something about this case outside the courtroom. And so we brought you in here to do this one-on-one so that obviously whatever information you have isn't passed on to your fellow jurors. So if you could just, let's start off with telling us exactly what it is you remember having read, seen, or heard about the case from an outside source.
All right, hold on.
What do you got there? Because they're going to want to know.
Oh, I basically wrote everything down because it was just a very long, drawn-out process, and I kind of just knew from the questionnaire what was going to be asked of me. So, with this,
Barnes, I'm very impressed. I really
so
am.
basically,
Is it all right if I sit down while you read that,
Yeah.
Mr. Barnes? Okay, great.
so, you know, I have lived in this town for 15 years, gone to high school, middle school here, IRSC. So I would say I know a lot of people in this town. I've grown up here. Now, I really only talk about to 5 people who are my best friends, or the rest in passing. I do have a lot of friends from different ethnic backgrounds, all different sexualities and genders. These friends have both felonies and misdemeanors, and then the others are also law-abiding citizens. Do I agree with some of my friends? No. With why they were convicted of misdemeanors and felonies. With some of them I do and some of them I don't. I'm sure if I did my research further, I can come to a better conclusion. I'm a firm believer, if you treat me well, I will treat you well. Now the topic on how much coverage I had in this case, practically none until after Tuesday, September 8th, the first day of jury duty. Going into work the next day, it was talked about, but nothing other than the jury being selected. From the rest of the week on, I could have talked about, it could have been talked about, but maybe I'm not sure. I take a lot of calls in the day. I speak to a lot of different people. So I'm very constantly busy, and with working full-time and going to school full-time, I really don't have time to sit here and listen to the media coverage, listen to the news, really listen to what people say. So I can't really remember, or I don't really remember honestly. What I know about the case is very limited. What I know is an officer was shot in the head, chest, or body somewhere and died. The officer had a family, and there was a big funeral. Other than that, there was nothing else I could think of. I first learned who could have possibly have done this on Tuesday, September 8th, and I use that word possibly strongly, in the meaning I am not sure if he did it or what he may consider his defense to be. I do not pay attention to the news really closely.
I am very busy in my day-to-day operations. I met this person face-to-face on Tuesday, September 8th. I do personally believe that the media distorts information and makes people believe certain facts or a certain way. On Tuesday, September 15th, this past week, I did notice media coverage outside. I am a smoker and there's nowhere else for the jurors to go, except out front. So what can I do? Now what they're really here for, I'm not sure. Now I can only speculate because of what Your Honor said. Stay out of the media coverage, do not talk about it, so forth. I could possibly hold you in contempt and you pay a fine. And I said to myself, a fine? I'm going to shut up because I'm a poor full-time college student. That's not going to be okay with this $11 an hour job I made. I mean, I've been here bored for a good amount of hours and nothing to do. There's only so many times you can use your iPod, do homework, play on your phone, and contemplate the meaning of life. As I noticed them, I put my coat hood up not to be seen. I walked past them. It was lunch. No other way for me to walk. I noticed other people doing the same thing as far as putting like a book on the side of their head. Now, I didn't see a cameraman and a reporter from WPBF 25 walked right by them. Then I saw other media coverage a few feet away down on the right. There was another cameraman and a reporter. So because I could not pass them, I had to basically walk behind the camera, okay? That is when the reporter said, the camera is not on, sir. I said to her, okay, it's Florida and it's sunny. Personally, I do not want to be on camera. I mean, I live very privately. I was kind of disgusted with it because out of all respect for the deceased, your jurors and the family and the defendant.
Okay. Magnolia, you have any questions?
Can we just approach for a second?
Barnes, bear with us just a minute. Thanks for bearing with us, Mr. Barnes.
Okay, Mr. Barnes, the issue that you mentioned in the course of your statement had something to do with the press and walking by the press and a concern about being seen. Do you have a reason to believe that you've been on camera? Does that concern you? I'm trying to follow that.
It just concerns me because at the end of the day, I mean, this should not be turned, if this is what they were here for, it should not be turned into a high media coverage thing. We are a small town. We are a big town, but we are a big family town, but we have small family towns in it. And out of respect for the deceased, out of respect for the jurors, out of the defendant and his family, and personally, that's just my belief.
And I guess what I'm trying to get at is the fact that you mentioned it makes me think that you have some concern about the coverage and how it might affect or impact your service as a juror?
No, nothing impacts my service as a juror because at the end of the day, I'm an independent thinker. I think for my own. I do everything on my own. So no media coverage is ever going to have an impact on me or my thinking.
Okay.
I'm a very unbiased person in general. I mean, we've all done things in our lives. I think we can all sit here and agree to that. But I just don't personally want to just be put on any kind of camera.
No, I get that, but you're like the first juror who's mentioned that, and so we wonder if there is a concern that could affect your service. Do you follow what I'm saying? Because of the media
no,
coverage.
I think I just said that, no, it would not affect my service.
Okay. Now, you indicated also during your questionnaire, or during your statement, that you're a full-time student?
Yes.
Okay, and also full-time employee?
Yes.
Okay. And you understand that as a full-time student, you can request exemption from service, but you're not doing that?
Yes.
Okay. With regard to the media exposure, all I heard you mention was maybe recently hearing something, and you mentioned talking to somebody at work on the 8th, or being in the presence of people at work on the 8th.
So basically, I work with all different types of people, and so yes, if you listen to office gossip, you're probably going to be fired. So at the end of the day, I don't sit here and listen because I'm in customer service. I have to sit here, figure out people's problems. I'm getting basically cussed out on the phone constantly. So, but I still love what I do. So I don't really have time to sit here and talk to other people unless it's about the job that I'm doing.
Okay, but I'm just trying to figure out what you were talking about. You came in on the 8th and filled out your questionnaire, right?
Mm.
And then you went to work and you told the judge that you heard people talking about it, correct?
Talking about the selection has started.
Okay, that's what we're trying to get. I'm just trying to figure out what it was that you heard at that point in time. Is that the first you had heard about it?
Yeah, well, about the jury being selected?
Yeah.
Well, other than, coming in on the 8th, that would be the first time that I've heard it from anybody.
Okay, and what was the conversations that were occurring at that time?
Just that the Tisdale trial was going on.
Okay.
The jury had been selected. That was really constant.
These people that were talking at work, did you inform them that you had been brought in as a prospective juror in the case?
No.
And tell them not to talk about it in your presence?
No. I didn't even mention it because personally, what I do, where I go, is personally nobody's business except my own.
Right, but I mean, what I'm saying is that the judge told you when you came in on that day to make sure to avoid any contact, media exposure, or whatever. And I'm just wondering if you made it known to a supervisor or to somebody, say, hey, look, I'm on jury duty. They shouldn't be talking about the case in front of me. That's what I'm trying to gauge.
Well, why would I do that when the judge told me not to talk about it? So why would I sit here and, because I'm in close quarters with people, so why would I sit here and tell people not to talk about something when, do you know what I mean?
Well, I guess here's what I'm thinking. You're in one of your moments between a beat, and they're talking about the case. And you can't help it over here because you guys are all in the same vicinity. They wouldn't know not to talk about it in your presence unless you told them. That wouldn't be talking about the case. That would be saying, I am a juror, don't talk about the case in my presence. That's what I'm getting at.
Well, really, I didn't really think that was my place.
Okay.
To sit there and to tell people not to talk about something, because at the end of the day, like I mentioned before, I'm going to think for myself. Nobody distorts my view of something.
Okay, so prior to coming in and reading the questionnaire and filling it out, you indicated you had information or knowledge about the case prior to that time?
Well, yes. I mean, I've lived in this town for 15 years.
Okay.
What I remember and what I don't remember, I can't say.
Well, that's what, I mean, that the point of this is, what do you remember?
And like I said, whatever I mentioned in here is exactly what I remembered. Somebody, an officer was shot, whether it died, had a family-big funeral. That was it. That's all that I know.
Okay. So that would be the extent of the details of information you would have. Okay, and the law ultimately is, can you set aside any, if you're selected as a juror in this case and you end up here in the box, you may hear something and then all of a sudden have a recollection. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I'm good.
Okay, all right, because I see you looking down. You might have a recollection about something you heard 2.5 years ago. And it might be inconsistent with what you hear here in court. Okay? And the law is you would be required to rely upon what you hear here in court. How are you going to deal with an inconsistency between something you recall as being in the media or being the truth at some distant time versus what you hear here in court?
Well, I mean, basically that's like being in class. I have to believe what, for instance, you as the prosecutors bring up as the evidence or the testimonies or whatever, and them as the defense to bring up their issues. So nothing, like I said, nothing's going to be distorted. It's your job to sit here and to find a guilty verdict. At the end of the day, that is what your job is. Their job is to try to get their client either the best plea deal or the best non-guilty deal possible. So at the end of the day, it's up to you guys to bring to the jury your evidence and your, not your opinion, but the case and the evidence and the testimony that you guys have available.
Okay.
That doesn't rely on me.
All right, and I just want to, I'm not putting
I
words in your mouth.
I have 50 feeling more comfortable, but when you first walk in and you just see 15 people staring at you, I mean, it's very overwhelming.
Okay, I don't mean, it seems like this is going on longer than it needs to, but you keep mentioning something that I need to address. If you're selected as a juror in this case, and it goes back to your initial concerns regarding the media, you'll be in this box, the media will be here, and the courtroom will be full of people. So there's really probably only 20 of us in here now. It's going to be more full. Does that make you nervous?
Standing right back in that corner right over there will be fine.
What do you mean?
That back corner right over there. I'm already calling my seat in case.
Okay.
That back corner.
What does that, why would you need to sit in that seat?
Because that's just, to me, that is where I would feel comfortable. When I go into a room, I look at all of my surroundings.
Okay.
So not only I can judge how I'm going to personally act, but what the feelings of the other people in the courtroom are.
Okay.
So with that, I personally just like my privacy. That it has nothing to do more than just my privacy.
Okay, but I'm trying. You got to understand that we're not as efficient, I guess, or as planned as you would like it to be. You could very well be here or here, front and center.
I object. This is beyond the scope of what he's supposed to be asking him about here. He's supposed to be asking him about his knowledge of the media.
I'll sustain the objection.
Thank you. Okay, can I be heard on it?
Yes, okay, yes, sir. Come on.
what I'm trying to inform you of is that we're not as, and I'm sure you haven't got the impression that we're completely coordinated and organized, but there's a possibility you can end up here. And all I want to know is what you're telling me about your concerns about the media and the presence of people. Does that make you uncomfortable, the potential for that?
Does it make me uncomfortable? I mean, that's a yes and that's a no situation. I mean, with people I don't really know, it's just very awkward to just be around.
Okay.
But like I said, at the end of the day, that's not my job. My job as a juror is to pay attention to what is going on, not to pay attention to people around me. I mean, that's like walking into class. I don't know the 30, 40 people that I'm in with class, but it's still just awkward being there. But at the end of the day, my job as a student is to do the best that I can do.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mr. Manship.
Ms. Burns, good morning. So, I took in every word of your statement, and we greatly appreciate the time that you took to actually put that down. We haven't had anybody else that's put that much forethought in it. And you actually answered a lot of the questions that I was going to have. Mr. Backetall was confusing me a little bit with his questions about what happened at your job. So I just wanted to, I think I understood you. I just want to kind of clarify. Is that okay? Mm-hmm. Okay. So you, do you work in a job where you basically have a computer, a phone? Do you wear a headset?
Yeah.
And call center. Okay. So do you have incoming calls or do you make outbound calls?
All incoming.
All incoming. Okay. So after you get off of a call, you wait until the next call comes through, correct? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
And the only reason why I'm saying that is because these wonderful women are typing your answers. And, okay, so when a, describe your work area for me. Is it a cubicle type setting?
Yeah, cubicle.
And multiple people inside of your same cubicle?
Yeah, well, not multiple, like, okay, so this is probably how big their cubicle is, from here to here. And then you have, I don't really have somebody who sits next to me because they just quit. But then I have somebody who sits on this side, people who sit behind me, and it's all done in rows.
And your cubicle is basically big enough for a desk, just barely big enough to hold your computer and your phone, I'm guessing, right?
Basically, yeah.
And your area for your chair.
Mm-hmm.
So, zero privacy.
Basically, zero privacy.
And how many people are inside of this sea of cubicles?
I would say you could roughly have 10 people, like, down each row, but again, I mean, it's a call center, so your turnover rate is very high. And some people don't work, different schedules. We're open from 7:30 to 11. You know, we have different things like VTO, which is voluntary time off. We can